Hello again, precious friends. Thanks for joining Aunt Patty on the Carnivore Hippie once again. When we ask ourselves why we want to change our behavior, it's very tempting and very easy to fall into pat answers. Because we don't want to experience negative consequences anymore. Because we want our health to improve. Because we want to gain vitality, stamina, attractiveness, or any of a number of other things. We want to make life easier on our partners, our kids, our friends, our parents, and our bosses, and ourselves. Who would choose to be sick, weak, fat, dependent, and incapacitated? I mean, it's only logical to want health and vitality and to not want to be, dependent and incapacitated, right? We see this reasoning as a given. It must be obvious even to a weak-brained idiot, right? So very often our thought processes stop right there. It's logical and rational, and what more does it need to be? Well, as we've already talked about, the part of our brain that drives our responses to triggers and compulsive behaviors does not operate on reason and logic. It operates on hormones, emotions, remembered experiences, and tantrums. It's an expert in using the tools of overreaction, distraction, and knee-jerks to get what it is absolutely convinced that it must have. There is no that it can accept without objection or a fight. It is a tantruming toddler, a rebellious teenager, and a power-mad tyrant all rolled into one. It's no wonder that most of us simply get used to conceding to it immediately and giving it what it wants. In reality, it's pretty normal. In primitive environments, this primitive part of our brain was actually the part that was most responsible for keeping human beings alive day to day. The powerful hormonal activity embedded successful behavioral pathways deep into our thought processes. There's specific reinforcements for finding food, for procreation, for self-protection, social acceptance, and even feelings of comfort and safety. The younger we are when we experience these reinforcements, the more powerful they are when we're older. And almost all of us have experienced this kind of thing when we've had memories of, say, a favorite food from childhood. A food that tastes good and is co-experienced with feelings of safety, affection, and comfort. Think baking cookies with grandma, or having pizza with your Little League team. This creates powerful cravings to repeat the experience and consume the food again. This is why stopping your thought processes with reason and logic, although it seems like it ought to work, actually doesn't. Fortunately, being human beings, we can learn to understand how our primitive brains, our reptilian brain and our limbic system, how they work, and we can use our higher brains, our neocortex, to trick or retrain our primitive brain to react differently to triggers. Okay, so self-awareness is going to be the tool which will achieve this for us. Okay. In my previous videos, we talked about discarding an old tool in favor of a new tool. But in this case, we're going to be using self-awareness and logic and reason together, blending them into a single tool, so to speak. Specifically, we're going to use reason and logic to understand how to give the primitive brain what it wants in a different way than it's accustomed to getting it. Self-awareness is going to help us recognize what the primitive brain is really looking for, and it will also empower us to manage the discomfort that we typically experience when we decide to engage in new and different ways of doing things. Remember, the primitive brain likes everything to stay the same. Anything that's different or new or unfamiliar feels dangerous, right? So it will fight against it by making us uncomfortable. So when we have a serious craving for, let's say, an unhealthy food or a behavior that we don't want to indulge in, we're going to begin by asking ourselves a series of questions and pay attention to the answers. Journaling on paper or by voice recording is going to be especially powerful here. As I've said before, getting the responses outside of your head where you can see them with your eyes or hear them with your ears is really important, at least initially. So the questions are going to be, number one, what was happening immediately before I recognized the desire to indulge in the behavior, right? Number two, what emotions was I experiencing at that moment? Number three, will indulging in the tempting behavior resolve the issue, or will it merely resolve some of the discomfort temporarily? And number four, is the outcome likely to be better if I indulge in the behavior and put off the discomfort temporarily, or will it really resolve the issue? And then, what do I think would be the best way to resolve the situation, to respond to the situation? Okay, so let's pretend, give an example. What was happening before I noticed the craving? Well, I was at work and all of a sudden my boss gave me some unexpected extra tasks. And so what emotions was I experiencing at that moment? Well, I would have been angry and frustrated. And why do I believe I was experiencing those particular emotions? Well, because I was put in an uncomfortable position. I'm uncomfortable confronting my boss, but the tasks are an unfair burden on me. Now, will indulging in the behavior resolve the issue? Or will it merely resolve some of the discomfort temporarily? Well, it'll help me relax and feel better for a very short time, but the discomfort's going to come back because I'll just have to deal with this eventually by deciding either to confront my boss or just go ahead and do the work, neither of which I really want to do. Now, is the outcome likely to be better if I put off the discomfort by indulging the behavior, or if I decide to manage the situation and get it over with? Well, commonly, you may feel like either way, it's going to suck. But you don't have to make it suck more. So it's probably going to be better to deal with it and get it over with. And what do I think would be the best way to deal with the situation? The best way would be to face my discomfort and respectfully confront my boss. Now, at this point, this practice is going to begin to create a new pathway, which eventually will not incorporate the undesired behavior. Now, is this a spell that will somehow magically make us resistant to the desire for the food or the behavior? Will it somehow make us immune to the discomfort? No, unfortunately, that's not the way it works. But in fact, it's likely that as you first begin practicing this, you'll ultimately succumb to the undesired behavior a significant proportion of the time. At first. But as you continue to practice, this eventually, the time will come when you're able to successfully opt out of the undesired behavior, despite the cravings or the discomfort. And once this happens the first time, the more likely you are to be successful again. I know when I started doing this at first, it took probably, I'm thinking 10 or 12 situations before I was able to opt out of the craving, eating the food the first time. And I was really starting to get a little frustrated, and I was really starting to doubt that it was going to work. But the first time it happened, it was such a revelation. And like I said, I was starting to get frustrated that it might not happen. But realistically, I was just being impatient because 10 or 12 times really isn't that much. There are people who have to practice this a lot longer than that. But, you know, I kind of had this, you know, superior opinion of myself. I mean, I knew a lot. I knew so much that I didn't know what I didn't know, if you know what I mean. But anyway, my coach helped me through that. But anyhow, like I said, once this happens the first time, it's way more likely to happen again. Sometimes you'll see it happens the first time, and then it'll happen again, and then it'll happen again, and you'll think, oh my gosh, I've got this beat. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden, you'll backslide some, and you'll not be able to resist the craving for, 3 or 4 times in a row. And then you'll feel like, what happened? And this is where you have to practice self-compassion. This is all a normal part of the process, okay? Honestly, it really, really is. Don't beat yourself up about it. But anyway, we go on. None of this is going to make the desire for the food or the behavior go away magically. And I want you to also notice that we haven't forbidden ourselves to indulge in the behavior. That's important. What our focus ought to be is choosing to respond, at least initially, differently to the situation with the understanding that it's going to be uncomfortable in the short run, But we can recognize that discomfort is normal in life, and we can learn to tolerate it if we have an appropriate attitude. So I would like you to keep in mind that the focus is not success in avoiding the behavior or the craving in a specific instance. At least not at first. The focus is the process. Practice this train of thought as often and as soon as you practically can once you recognize a craving. If you end up indulging in the craving, which you probably will sometimes, please remember this is normal and guilt or shame is inappropriate, okay? Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again, as they say. And continue to practice self-compassion and self-care. If you look back at my videos from January, you'll find a video about my experience with stress at work over the holidays. It's a reasonably good example of how I analyzed my own lapse. And I'll link it in the description box. So, precious friends, the only way to fail is to quit. But even if you do quit, tomorrow is another day. You can unquit and start over. Today, you may be staring at a mountain and thinking, how in the world am I going to get over that? Well, I can tell you, if you keep going, just one step at a time, one day, that mountain that was so intimidating is going to be so far back in the distance that you can barely see it. But the person that you become by climbing the mountain is going to remain forever. That's the real value of the mountain. Okay? I love you all, precious friends. I wish you peace, love, and meat. And we will talk again very, very soon. Bye.